All right, let's start talking some data. Notice, and this is 2.1, organizing qualitative data. Qualitative, which means it is descriptive data, right? Not quantitative. This is qualitative. All right, so I just want to point that out. That's what we're starting with this. All right, so the first thing that we're looking at is a frequency distribution. All right, so a frequency distribution lists each category of data, and the number of occurrences for each category of data. And the number of occurrences for each category of data. Okay, so to be frank with what this is a tally chart. And a frequency is how often does this happen? So for each category that we're talking about, how many times that happened, that's all this is saying. So we're just going to tally these up and then give the number associated with it. That's literally what's going down here. So don't make this harder than what it is. We're just going to tally it up and write how many there are numerically. All right, so a physical therapist wants to determine types of rehabilitation required by her patients. To do so, she obtains a simple random sample of 30 of her patients and records the body part that required rehab. In this table, construct a frequency distribution of location of injury. So literally what we're going to do is we see back gets a tally, back gets a tally, hand gets a tally. All right, this is what's happening here. So wrist, back, groin, elbow. Notice I'm crossing these off as I do this just because I think it's easier. So when you do a tally, remember there's groups of 5. So you do 4 and then 1 across for the 5th. That's the easiest way to make a tally. Hip, knee, hip, neck, knee, shoulder, back, 4 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, knee, back, hand, back, and wrist. Okay, once you have all these, and notice I crossed them off. That way I didn't get confused about where we were in this. And then my frequency of this is 12. My frequency of wrist is 2. The back is 12, wrist is 2, elbow is 1, hip is 2, shoulder is 4, knee is 5, hand 2, groin 1, neck 1. That is literally it. That is a frequency distribution. Ta-da! Super cool, right? Qualitative, meaning that we're just tallying up something that describes. So this is a description of what the physical therapist needed to rehab. Cool, right? Now here's the other deal. How do I know if this is accurate? I know that I have 30 patients. So you can always add these up and make sure that adds to 30. So if you add all that up, you'll see that goes to 30, and that's just an extra check for you. All right? Okay, cool. So we can have a frequency that we're looking at. All right? You can also have a relative frequency. We're taking it to that next level. So a relative frequency is the proportion or percent of observations within a category and is found by using this formula. Now, here's what I want to point out to you. This says proportion or percent. Here is the deal, and I want to highlight this because I want you to realize what is happening here. With this percent, this is written as a decimal. So when you have a proportion, that is a decimal, and we're going to get into that more as we progress through the course. So I want to kind of plant the seed right now of how this is going to go down. When you're talking about a proportion, that is a decimal. If you're talking about a percent, oh my goodness, I'm tripping over my words. You're going to convert that to a decimal first, and that's what you're going to look at. That's important. So don't leave it as a percent. It has to be a decimal. That's a big deal. All right. So hopefully you're catching on to that right now. All right. So here's the formula. If we want to find relative frequency, now this is just, oh, okay, what's going to be my decimal? Well, think about that. Literally anything that you do. How do you figure out the decimal that goes with a part over a whole? You divide it, right? So this is the frequency, or how many times it happens, out of the total, or the sum of all frequencies. So that could be the sum of all frequencies, which is the same thing as the category, whichever category it is you're talking about, over the total that you have. All right? Part over whole. Literally what it is forever. Now, a relative frequency distribution lists each category of data together with the relative frequency. So here's how this all plays out. So we're going to take, I'm going to scoot this down so we can see it a little bit better. We're going to take the frequency that we had up above, same data that we're looking at, and we're going to write it in here. So back, there were 12 of those. Wrists were 2, elbow 1, hip 2, shoulder 4, knee 5, hand 2, groin 1, neck 1. And the total, when we add all those up, are 30. We already checked that. We know we've got that going for us. Now, relative frequency is part over whole. So if I want to figure out the relative frequency, which is the proportion, right? The proportion, that's going to be 12 out of how many total injury or body parts do we have? 30. Literally, that's it. Put that into your handy dandy calculator, and we're going to go to 4 decimal places. It doesn't say it on here, but this is how we're going to play it out. Not always, just look and see what it is. For this particular one, we're going to go to 4 decimal places. All right, plug that in your handy dandy calculator, and what do you get? 0.4 for that one. 2 out of 30, and you get, plug it in your calculator, 667, because you're rounding. When you round, then you're rounding up. And then do the same thing, 1 out of 30. That's 0.333. Again, 2 out of 30, that's the same that we saw before, so we don't have to do extra work on that one. We've already got that squared away. 4, we haven't done that one yet, so plug that in. 0.1333. 5 out of 30, that's going to be 0.1667. 2, boom, we got another one of those, so we don't have to keep plugging that in when we've got it. We've got another 1, and there's another 1. I just didn't put a 0 in front. It doesn't. You don't have to because it's just that 0. Now, all of these together, what this is saying, when you have a relative frequency, all of these together are going to make the total of 30. Because if you add all those up, what do you think this total is going to be? All of these parts are going to be what? A whole. So if I have this as percents, oops, let me squeeze this down a little. A percent. All the percent together is how much percent? 100%. 100% is all of them, right? So if I have these as decimals, which is what we talked about, everything has to be a decimal. If I add all of these decimals up, what are you going to get? You're going to get a 1. Ah, cool, right? So the total is a number that there are, and when you have a frequency, it will always add up to 1. Or depending on how you round, it'll add up crazy super close to 1. And that's the goal here, because all of those parts are going to add up to a whole 1. All right? That's the deal. Frequency is the tally. Relative frequency is that proportion with that decimal.